Hi fellow witches, I'm doing a video about the witches pyramid. It's not going to be too in-depth, I'm just going to explain a little bit about how I personally feel about it and how I use it in my practice. The witches pyramid, the origins are sketchy, as anybody who's researched it will probably already know. The only writing that has kind of stood the test of time and popularised the idea of the witches pyramid is writing by Aleister Crowley and Eliphas Levi. Beyond that, we're not really sure exactly how much of what either of them had to say comes from kind of like antiquity. Eliphas Levi said that the witch's pyramid was kind of taken from the Meiji, who used it as kind of like the four indispensable conditions. So, because originally, obviously, there were only 4 points on the witch's pyramid. Now that it's become popularised and it's used by contemporary witches, we think of it as having five because we add the element spirit, which is to go. But back then it was just to will, to dare, to know, and to be silent when Eliphas Levi wrote about it. And he said that it was kind of like this rule, this pyramid of rules for the Meiji to follow, so that in their magical workings they were always exuding excellence and always being the best at it that they could be, kind of thing. And then it kind of was borrowed and became massively popularised. Now it's in a great many books about contemporary witchcraft, loads of books for learners and beginners. So, it's kind of taken on a life of its own, and I think it's one of the only things that I learned while I was studying Wicca that has really stood the test of time for me and is still a massive part of my practice, and I'm happy for that. I sometimes do think about the witch's pyramid and the points on the pyramid whenever I feel like I'm lost or I'm not sure what to do about a certain situation, or just before I go into the ritual mindset. Sometimes I will think about the pyramid and the points on it and what they mean to me personally. So I'll just show you before I begin. I've just done this really crappy little diagram to explain to anybody who doesn't know what the witch's pyramid kind of looks like now, and it's associated with the cardinal directions including spirit. So there you have like spirit to go, water to dare, earth to be silent, air to know, and to will is fire. Which, if you followed the trainee tarot course or you know anything about the elements in tarot, you'll see that each of them is actually quite fitting. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I feel about each of them. First of all, water to dare. I think that this idea of daring in magic and in spiritual exploration in general is really poetic and romantic to me, and it's something that I feel that I have done and need to continue to do. To dare kind of tells me to shake my practice up, to believe in myself, to explore unknown territory without any sense of emotional or intellectual rigidity, and not to entertain material intellectual materialism. So not to just drop anchor at a label and feel that that's where I'm comfortable, but to press on and also to dare to challenge my own abilities, to dare to challenge what I feel I know, to kind of push myself beyond. And I like the fact that to dare is popularly associated with the cardinal direction of with associated with water. I'm not being very articulate today. Because I feel that to dare is kind of almost like to go deeper, to sink in, to really explore the great underneath. If you think about how deep the ocean is and what uncharted territory it really is for us, and how afraid so many of us are of the depths, both on planet Earth and within ourselves, the inner realms. I kind of like that idea, I like that association. To will, fire, this again is a really important part of practice, and particularly when it comes to thoughts about magic, obviously nothing is going to get done without that pure will, without that pure intention. And fire, I feel, is the element of both creation and destruction. So I think it's really important to look at what our pure intentions are, what we want to do away with in magical practice, and what we really want to set up and adhere to as well. So I think that's a really interesting part of the witch's pyramid. And to will is something that I never feel I've had any great problem with, but I suppose when it comes to things like daily practice and pushing myself to study more and engage in ritual in a more meaningful and all-consuming way, and also the will to look at myself as the spiritualist that I am and not to forget that, so kind of the will to mix the magical and the mundane, I think that comes up a lot for me. Air, to know, obviously. I I feel, as a great many witches do, that the quest for knowledge, both inner and outer, is absolutely paramount to what it takes to be a good little witch. And in paganism and in spiritual exploration in general, I feel that I'm very open to all theological concepts, all pantheons, all types of mythology. I really want to get to grips with the way that we express and explore the idea of God and the idea that symbolism is the language of God. So I'm always up for knowing, and I'm always up for researching, and I feel that's a big part of what it means to be a spiritualist and a witch, but also a big part of what it means to be a fulfilled human being as well. To be silent. To be silent, I've already done a video about this part of the witch's pyramid when it was kind of at that time where it was popular to do one, and I kind of looked around and saw a lot of other people's as well. So my opinion about to be silent, that part of the pyramid, has kind of changed over the last few months as a result of seeing what other people have to say, which is great. I love that. For me, to be silent does mean, obviously, to work with discretion and not to feel that I need to justify or prove myself to anybody, and to understand that essentially being spiritual and following a spiritual path and crafting that spiritual path is a very solitary journey. Even when you are part of a group, there is a very big part of spiritual fulfillment that comes from being alone and from being comfortable with your choices on your own, and from not feeling that you have to justify yourself, from not feeling that you have to be accepted or approved of in terms of what you're doing or what you're going through or feeling. So that's another part of what I think it means to be silent. And with regard to magical practice, I've seen a lot of witches saying that, power shared is power lost, power talked about is power that isn't going to manifest correctly. And while some people wouldn't agree with that when it comes to magic, and it's not really a concern for me anyway, because I don't practice magic a lot of the time, I do feel that there is some truth behind that, obviously, because if we think about magic as energy that we have harvested and harnessed within ourselves to manifest into a certain intention, then we must also have the belief and hold that belief that other people have energy that they can manifest toward a certain intention as well, whether they know it or not, whether they're skilled at it necessarily or not. And of course, if they're not skilled at it, then the chances of it working against the magical spell that you set in place will be lessened, but the chance is there, because of course they have energy, they have energy that they put out into the world, thoughts that they put out into the world. And if we believe that that's what spellcraft is, then of course we should keep silent about the spellcraft that we perform. I mean, that's just obvious, because other people may place their judgment onto it or may decide to direct their energy in another way against it, and then it will kind of mess up that pure intention or tangle things or unnecessarily convolute things. So that kind of makes sense to me. But I do think, in terms of being silent about the fact that you are a witch at all, or the fact that you're pagan at all, that kind of thing, as I discussed in my video about silence, can be detrimental and counterproductive for the pagan community, obviously, because we wouldn't have such a strong community and we wouldn't be fighting for our rights the way we have done since the repeal of the witchcraft laws. And we also wouldn't have that sense that we can be understood and empathise with, and we wouldn't have as many opportunities to learn, there wouldn't be as many resources. So, it's a double edged sword there. So yeah, that's one thing that I feel about to be silent. I think to be silent is, you could see it as a complex part of the witch's pyramid, or you could just see it as multifaceted, a very multi-dimensional rule, and I think that's really cool. I think that's something that really works with me well. To go, which pertains to the element of spirit, that obviously I think means that when you have all of the other base pillars in place, you're going forward, and you're always going forward, you're never stagnating. And if you have, those four key pillars: to will, to dare, to know, to be silent, then you are ready to go. And I think to go is just about that energy moving and about you moving and pushing yourself. I think to go is quite an energizing part of the witch's pyramid. I think it's great that it's been put in there. I kind of like that. So these are just my thoughts on the witch's pyramid and why I feel that the rules that the witch's pyramid entails are, I think they're self-evident for anybody who follows any kind of path like the one that I follow. I think that they are just pointers that you can look at to show yourself that you are pure of heart, and to encourage yourself when you may feel low or unsure in your ability. I think that all five of the points on the witch's pyramid as we know it now are noble and admirable, and I think they could work for anybody who wants to embark on a path like this. I think it's a really beautiful idea, and I'm glad that contemporary witchcraft kind of adopted it and made it their own. I think that's great, and I would love your thoughts on the witch's pyramid, whether or not you actually use it or relate to it. Sorry, in practice. That would be great. Thanks for your time today, guys. Blessed be.